So today we look at, well, what can only be described as Sargon's of Akkad's either political party slash movement slash pressure group slash God knows what. And Sargon has basically fulfilled every single thing that I've said about this guy before. Look, he's all style and no substance. He talks about all these grandiose ideas, but has no substantive, bearing on reality. If you want an example of this, look at the conversation he had with Sam Cedar. Right? And I know a lot of people say, oh, but he was, they muted his mic. Well, I've seen both of those. Both theirs from Majority FM, and I've both seen his recorded version. And I will tell you now, Sargon does not come off well in either of those. Okay, just because you can now hear what he's saying doesn't mean he comes off well at all. So here we are on his the Liberalist Society. So this is from his homepage. Welcome to the Liberalist Society. The Liberalist Society is a grassroots activist movement that promotes the rights of the individual for the protection and empowerment of each person in society. Right? Okay. We believe that this goal is best achieved through political ideology of libertarianism. More information can be found in our statement of principles. So, here's the thing. If you were any other, shall we say, political party, movement or, group like this, you would state these values, but then you would say what actions you would take to instill these values. These are what we call policies. Right? So remember that. So this is their list of liberalist principles. This statement of principles is a list of values that the liberalists hold as ideals. We also recognize that we live in the real world and that no set of principles can ever be fully realized. But promoting this worldview will produce a demonstrably better society than the current alternatives. Again, you have to actually put these into a real world scenario. You actually have to produce policies based on these ideas. So what ideas, so policies are going to come from these ideas then? So individual rights. Protecting the rights of the individual must be the highest value of society. To foster mutual tolerance and respect towards the cultivation of dignity for every person. How are you going to achieve that? What policy do you want in place to protect the rights of the individual? What laws do you find currently in this country that do not protect the rights of the individual? So, democracy. Constitutional democracy is the best way for a free citizenry to maintain a state and resist tyranny. So what laws will you pass to ensure this? What do you think of the current state of our democracy now? Example, the House of Lords. It's not very democratic. These guys who sit there are, so we say, pointed at and said, you're now a lord, dispatch the House of Lords. That's the basis of just one person selecting these. It's not a group decision. What policies and laws do you want that will influence your betterment of this constitutional democracy? So, economic freedom. Property rights that begin with personal self-ownership and private property creates the most productive societies. Such as You could have said such as, and what property rights? What, private property rights? What laws do you want to see introduced to protect those rights? What laws currently do you think aren't protecting those rights? What, this is, policy, what I've always been talking about, that Sargon can talk a big game, but when it comes to actual talking about real world policy and laws, there's nothing. This is why I have bagged on him since, I've made my big turnaround. You can talk about everything you want, but eventually you have to talk about the real world and the real world decisions you want to do and see, and not only that, but the consequences of those potential actions you want to create. This happens every single day, and I've just knocked my tripod, sorry about that. This happens pretty much every single day in Parliament. So, freedom of speech. Freedom of expression is necessary and a fundamental pillar of a free society. Again, what laws, or shall we say, here's the thing, this is a given. Sargon could have updated this. He could have said on this page, for example, we want to change the 2003 Communication Act, specifically the section where Count Dankula was indicted. Has he added that since then? No, he hasn't. But that was a perfect opportunity for Sargon to actually talk about real world policy and not, ideological masturbation. Self-reliance. Peoples possess agency and should be treated as such, because treating people like victims becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Again, what laws do you want passed in this? Blind justice. Each individual should be governed by the same laws as their peers, without arbitrary discrimination, and be presumed innocent until proven guilty by a fair trial. So what laws do you think are impeding this? You sooner or later, he has to actually talk about this stuff. It's great saying that, but what laws or, acts does he want to see proposed or maybe retracted or changed to ensure that? Secularism. Everyone is free to participate, everyone is free to practice their religion or not, as long as it does not interfere with the rights of others. So that is the closest, I'd say the closest he actually comes to an actual policy. So basically, freedom of religion, essentially. But again, what law or, acts does he want to see that this is, ensured or enforced? It's great having, a secularist policy, but how do you achieve that secularist policy? How do you go about saying this doesn't discriminate against one religion or another? For example, let's say, Tommy Robinson introduces a hijab bill. This would contradict Sargon's secularism, because under their religion, they have every right, to wear their hijab. This comes under his secularism and his individual rights, because it's infringing not only their religious freedom but their individual right to follow their religion. Will Sargon stand up against Tommy Robinson's law, of a hijab ban? He should do. I don't know if he will, but bearing in mind they are best buddies at the moment over this whole free speech thing, it'll be interesting to see how long that lasts. But there you have it, folks. The Liberalist Society. any other society would be pointing out the laws or acts or changes they want actually making to a law or thing. It's fine having all these principles, but sooner or later, as Sargon himself posted here, we also recognise that we live in a real world, and that no set of principles can ever be fully realised, but promoting this worldview will produce a demonstrably better society than the current alternatives. So you want to promote this worldview, but sooner or later, Sargon, you have to accept the real world. You have to accept you want to pass laws and or acts into this country. What do you want passing? And if he can't answer that, then there is no point in the Liberalist Society being this grassroots pressure movement. Because you can go to an MP and say, oh, look at our principles. Well, what the MP will turn around and say, okay, what laws do you want me to pass based on those principles? If you do not have that, he ain't going to do anything for you. So that's the Liberalist Society, a party with high ideas but with actual no ideas to get them implemented.